Welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witness leadership that they are living in a modern day spiritual paradise. I'm your host here, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and a kid raised as a witness in the 1970s and 80s. As I do, a warning, we try to have some fun here while we heal, while we learn a few things. So each episode features sarcasm, humor, and more. Please note, I'm not trying to offend anyone, just my own brand of observation. Thank you for being here. This week, I'm going to dive into a pet subject of mine. And I've shared some of these thoughts in the past. However, it continues to be something I can't wrap my head around. I can't quite define. In full transparency, this is one of those subjects that I really struggle to unpack or even understand. I just know it's real, it's tangible. And I'm still not confident enough to say that this is a universal experience. Like everyone, even every listener here, has this experience or even has this thought. But when I'm in deep thought, I can't shake the feeling that this may just be me, my own personality. But I decided to share anyway because I'd like to get everybody else's thoughts. My experience, and even then, I find it difficult to put into words what I'm trying to describe, may be different from yours. With all of that said, please feel free to comment or share your own experience on what I'm going to attempt to talk about today. I'm beyond interested in hearing what other people's perspectives are, so let's dive in. I'm going to set the stage by stating what I believe is a fact. Jehovah's Witnesses create a false sense of security. Security, defined both physically and emotionally, is a very complex subject, often defined by each individual person. Physical security is a subject unto itself, but today I'm going to focus on emotional or even mental security. And it's here that Jehovah's Witnesses fail. And I mean epically fail. And not only that, but mislead everyone that comes into contact with them. Emotional safety is critically necessary and widely misunderstood. Even today, again, I don't fully understand it. I can't wrap my arms around it, my head. But let's start with us just as people, as individuals. An emotional sense of security is critical to our well-being. From Dr. Helene Brenner, PhD, and Dr. Larry Ledich, LCSW-C, in a January 2023 Psychology Today article, they tell us, quote, emotional safety doesn't mean bubble wrapping yourself or others so that nobody ever feels hurt or even uncomfortable. Emotional safety is something very different and fundamentally rather simple. It's the visceral feeling, that is, a feeling that you feel physically in your body, that with this person or these people or in this place, you don't have to feel scared to be really you, end quote. And I have to say from the outset, I love the way the two doctors describe emotional security, that it's visceral. It's tangible, but you can't quite hold it, which is exactly why I have such a difficult time defining or discussing it here. A true cocoon of emotional security is so visceral, so deeply intimate and personal, with that cocoon shaped by each of our own experiences, our own personalities, our own background, our childhood, our traumas, and more. It's so deeply personal. But consider how emotional safety and physical safety work together in our lives, how they're absolutely critical to everything we say or do, whether you're a Jehovah's Witness or not. And neither of these two senses of security can just be turned off like a light switch. They're always on. They're always running in the background, so to speak, even as we sleep. As an example, feel free to share some of your wildest dreams. Be careful here. No, I do not want to hear about the donkey, the dwarf, the clown, and that trip to Tijuana. No, I do not. But dreams are really complex things and subjects. Just ask all the guys that wrote the Bible. Okay, back on track. Actually, I do want to hear about your dreams. But this emotional and physical security that we're trying to define, especially the emotional and mental, is complex, very complex. From the same 2023 Psychology Today article, we are told, quote, why is emotional safety so important? Because it's based on a need that's even more elemental, physical safety. For every creature on earth, the prime directive is safety. Food and procreation are important, but survival tops the list, and survival is rarely easy. To survive in an environment full of things that can kill you, you need a very well-tuned system for staying safe. Notwithstanding your reckless 18-year-old nephew and his friends, survival, with its concomitant need to maintain safety, is still our most powerful instinct. What does that have to do with emotional safety? We human beings are among the most defenseless and vulnerable creatures on the planet. End quote for a moment. Isn't that I felt like I got slapped upside the head reading that. Humans are among the most defenseless and vulnerable creatures on earth. Back to the quote, we have no claws, no sharp teeth, no quills, and we can't even run very fast. For the first 12 years of our lives, and even more so for the first 6, we can barely protect and take care of ourselves at all. End quote. Emotional safety and how it holds hands directly with our physical safety. Critical, absolutely critical to a happy and stable life. Feeling secure, just feeling secure. And I don't think anyone would argue the fact that a Jehovah's Witness claims that their life, their thoughts, their feelings, and even their physical presence all revolve around the organization and their belief system. Consider what a Jehovah's Witness receives in terms of messaging, many of us, and many that might be listening, from birth. From the Secure Future brochure, the article, A Secure Future, How Can You Find It? On page 26, witnesses were told, quote, those Christians known as Jehovah's Witnesses have found God's word to be true and have experienced that putting it to work in their lives brings splendid benefits right now. Those benefits come from giving the right importance to spiritual matters in one's daily life. End quote. Okay. You're a Jehovah's Witness. You're seeking a sense of security, of safety, of warmth. They're saying it's all available via the organization and what they spew out. How about just one more? From the Watchtower to July 1st, 1984, we get, quote, we therefore urge one and all to lay hold on God's promises and to trust Him fully. By continued diligent study of the Bible and by application of its wise counsel, you may attain to the grandest of blessings, including everlasting life in a paradise on earth. Such are the dividends paid on investing now in the secure future that God promises in His Word. End quote. And I want to say here and now, I simply do not have the time to share every reference, notably because this type of messaging about your security, both personally and emotionally, this messaging was thrust upon a witness and is thrust upon Jehovah's Witnesses weekly, if not daily. It molds our thinking. It molds our personalities. And we end up with a soul that equates security, especially emotional security, with guess what? All things Jehovah's Witnesses. We walk the earth with a false sense of security that is painful to even consider living without. Even what, if or what we've learned isn't something we no longer accept, we still feel its absence after you leave this organization. It's an incredible dynamic that truly finds its way to your DNA. It shapes your soul. So allow me for a few minutes to explain my own experience, my own vulnerabilities. And look, I hate being alone, so that's not true. I'm kind of a loner. But if you feel like you can share, I would love to hear. Tell me if you can relate. As soon as I was exposed to all of this thinking about security, both emotionally and physically, and it all being attached to Jehovah's Witnesses, as soon as I was exposed to this thinking as a little guy in the 1970s, I allowed it to mold my soul. For me, I was a fatherless boy, living with a young single mother who to this day is almost, and I'm not kidding, she's almost as innocent as a child still in her late 70s. As a family, we had next to nothing, especially money. But she did an incredible job from the time she was 18 years old to raise us 3 kids. I was the first at 18, all by herself. She found her own sense of security inside Jehovah's Witnesses. And I think that's common. No, she would never be a pioneer or a missionary. She loved, and to this day just continues to love, the idea of paradise. Imagine that. She's an avid animal lover. It's an obsession. She loves animals. And it's nirvana for her to consider living forever in a paradise with all these animals and all of her children, and now all of her grandchildren, even great-grandchildren. Jehovah's Witnesses had her. They got her. And by extension, they had us. And as the oldest kid, I took on far too much responsibility from a young age. And I think today psychologists call that being parentified. I'm that guy. And with that came my own personal buy-in, so to speak, on all things Jehovah's Witnesses. I too wanted a sense of both emotional and physical security from the time I was a kid. And I think it's safe to say that we all develop an image of ourselves at a young age. And in absence of a strong father figure, in my case, I had to develop that all on my own. So fortunately, my association filled a void in this little boy. The association with Jehovah's Witnesses, a little guy that, like all other kids, craved a sense of stability or security. Jehovah's Witnesses are very good at filling voids. The regiments that males often need, knowing people expect you just to show up, whether it's for the meetings or for field service or to clean the assembly hall. The construction projects, developing self-esteem by answering at meetings and having everyone turn to smile at little Stacy. Look at him. Look at him go. This same dynamic is the exact force that has a young man inside Jehovah's Witnesses believing that handling the microphones is what we call a privilege. What a privilege. I have stories about the microphones and being overlooked for them, but it was a privilege. But all of this, despite where it's really rooted, helped me to develop a strong value system as a man as I grew older. I'm still drawn to books and movie characters who exhibit honor, that are high in character in all situations, often, as has been the case in my own life, to my own detriment. And it's for that reason that I found myself dwelling for hours at a time on my guy Noah. When I would consider how secure Noah must have been to not have kids for 500 years, boy, do I have questions. or how he set out on foot at 500 plus years old to find a gorilla on another continent, or how he knew how to help lions and gazelle just get along in a tight space. Yeah, those crazy thoughts and the character of Noah himself, it helped me feel secure. And I know this might be a little TMI, but it also might be a little deep. It might require some step back and meditate time. But I'd ponder questions, these types of questions, I guess, as I stared out at San Pablo Bay in San Rafael, California, knowing that everything is leading us to a paradise on earth where I don't need to worry about getting old or sick or a retirement fund. None of that mattered. It worked for Noah. Minus that time he, of course, got naked and sloppy drunk. And look, it would also work for me. For a time as a kid inside Jehovah's Witnesses, I felt warmly secure inside the cocoon of the organization. I felt like, I know something my classmates don't know. As they prepared for a life in the real world, this guy was genuinely preparing my life for a fantasy. And we initially might laugh at that, but just think about how devastating that will and would be. Not just to me, but to anyone like me who planted their flag of security, both mentally and emotionally, as well as physically, in this organization. A kid who was on their way to being an adult, wrapped up in a false sense of security that was planted there in his head since he was little by Jehovah's Witnesses, giving me and all those kids like me a decided disadvantage in life. And I want to say here, so far, please, before you start thinking this is victim mentality, it is not. I'm trying to get to the core of this. I'm just here speaking about the false sense of security created by Jehovah's Witnesses. And my only reference point is me. So please, when you consider stuff like this and what's this done is mentally and emotionally to people, you'll see it now in people you love that still might be Jehovah's Witnesses. Don't dismiss the devastating circumstances this has on the human soul. Remember, a sense of security is a basic human need. And if you're a Jehovah's Witness seeking a sense of security, the basic desire you feel and want is fed with things like this. From the Awake of October 22nd, 1989, page 21, we are told, quote, "Picture yourself in paradise. You're in a meadow with a plush, green carpet of grass under your feet. To the side of you is an awe-inspiring waterfall cascading over rocks down the side of a hill. Overhead hangs beautiful weeping willow trees with clusters of violet blossoms producing the most pleasant fragrance. In the distance, you see a deer grazing. A grizzly bear comes up to you and allows you to pet and cuddle his massive fur. Birds of paradise are singing a delightful song. Wouldn't that be wonderful? What a beautiful future to look forward to." End quote. Awake, October 22nd, 1989, page 21. Yeah, just me, Noah, and a bunch of animals. Me teaching him how to put on khakis, because, the Watchtower told me so. Awkwardly watching the resurrected Mrs. Noah walk right by us, and him realizing he can never be with her again, because they're resurrected. No love for the resurrected. But hell, paradise and stuff. This is what was fed and is fed into the minds of Jehovah's Witnesses when it comes to future security. And in all seriousness, it shapes your soul. And I don't even know how to define that. I'm going to put it out there that this is one of several reasons that Jehovah's Witnesses stay in the religion. This false sense of security. Do you remember, and boy, I'm going to try to pull a Stephen Lett illustration out of my butt here, but do you even remember what it was like to jump into a swimming pool for the first time when you couldn't swim? Or what it's like to let go of the edge of the pool and try to swim when you have no clue how to do it? Do you remember, like I do, that feeling of terror? Or was it just me? Still not a great swimmer, by the way. But that feeling you get letting go of the poolside when you can't swim, that sense of security you have holding onto the wall is exactly, in my mind, what keeps many Jehovah's Witnesses going to the Kingdom Hall for decades. And to ask them to leave is to ask them to give up an emotional and physical sense of security, even though it's false. With all of this shaping your soul, you move through life with a pair of glasses on that are distorting everything you can see around you. Everything. Can you relate? I often call it, and I've said it on the show, I've shared it in my own heart and soul here, that once a Jehovah's Witness, as well as other traumas in life, the sky's never quite as blue. It's never quite as blue, and I can't define it. But a true false sense of security that shapes your decisions, from schools, jobs, even romance, who you love. I often compare it a little bit to Arrested Development. Not the show, which by the way was great, but the personality disorder of Arrested Development. And please note, this is my own effort to capture something I can't quite describe, a dynamic I can't put my arms around. It's simplified, but I believe it needs to be spoken from the mountaintops. Why? I bring it up from time to time, even on this show, because I think it's devastating, folks. I think it's devastating. An inevitable fall once you realize that it was all a false sense of security. Even psychologists recognize the heavy impact of religious ideology on the human need for security. From the article, The Security Blanket Concept of Religion by Nigel Barber, PhD, from July 2nd, 2012, he makes the bold statement that the key to religion, at the end of the day, are you ready for this? Is stress management. That's what religion does. It's stress management. And we all know there is no stress in feeling secure. This is what he has to say, quote, according to the security blanket concept of religion, supernatural belief systems provide peace of mind and help believers to cope with the more stressful events in their lives. This is a valuable service because chronic stress increases blood pressure, there's the physical, leading to heart disease, clinical depression, and contributing to a number of other health problems ranging from obesity to cancers. The security blanket idea succeeds in explaining why some situations evoke a religious response. It encompasses the known physiological effects of religious rituals and beliefs. Like a child's security blanket, religious ritual is a source of comfort when people are distressed. World religions generally offer peace of mind. Researchers at Duke University found that religious rituals function as an anti-stress mechanism. They demonstrated that individual prayer, as well as attending church services, reduces blood pressure, a reliable index of reduced psychological stress. Elevated blood pressure causes heart disease, and heart disease is the #1 killer in many developed countries. This research provides a remarkable, literal verification of Marx's political idea of religion as a calming, quote, opiate of the people. Consequently, prayers and rituals may contribute directly to health and long life. Moreover, the availability of an effective stress reduction mechanism helps people to feel more confident and optimistic about their lives, a frame of mind that yields health dividends. End quote. And I know that was long-winded. Thank you. But I think if you were listening carefully to what was being described there by the good doctor, the emotional benefits of security and how it impacts physical safety and security, I think most Jehovah's Witnesses can relate to this. The leadership of this organization has recognized how vulnerable the human heart, especially mental and emotional issues, are in human beings. How vulnerable we are. And this organization mastered filling that void long ago, wrapping millions of people in this child security blanket, if you will. It's the reason that entire generations of J-dubs have skipped college. It's the reason entire generations of men shaved their faces. It's why married people that Jehovah's Witnesses married people that they didn't really love, but they were available and they were a witness. It's why they go to the Kingdom Hall multiple times a week. It's even why they allow a loved one that needs blood to refuse it and die. All of it is based on a false sense of security. You know, Jehovah reads hearts. I'm a regular pioneer. And any diversity I face, well, that'll be fixed in paradise. You hate your husband? It's okay, stick it out. You're exactly where you need to be. That's going to get fixed in paradise. Oh, look at that. You're going to prison for handing out our magazines. You're okay. Just wait for paradise. From the Watchtower Study Edition of October 1st, 2002, titled Jehovah Blesses and Protects Those Who Are Obedient, we have an article based on this scripture from the New World Translation, Proverbs 1:33. Quote, "As for the one listening to me, he will reside in security and be undisturbed from dread of calamity." End quote. Okay, perfect. I'm a Jehovah's Witness. I'm feeling insecure, and I want that warm blanket of safety, of security. How do I find it? Well, you guessed it. There's only one way, folks. That same article from October 2002, Watchtower paragraph 22 says, quote, "Today, Jehovah does not inspire prophets as in the past. Instead, he has commissioned a faithful slave class to provide timely spiritual food to his household. How important, therefore, that we have an obedient attitude toward that slave." As the following article will show, such obedience also reflects our attitude toward Jesus, the slave's master. There it is. He is the one to whom the obedience of the peoples belongs. End quote. Yeah. So for any apologists or anyone who's confused by this subject, or I'm not explaining it very well, true security, both mentally, emotionally, and physically, yeah, it's only available through Jehovah's Witnesses. And many of us gave over our lives and allowed them to shape our view of what security means and how it's defined. So if you want to feel any sense of security, get under their blanket and remember this from the September 1st, 1989 Watchtower, page 19, quote, "Only Jehovah's Witnesses, those of the anointed remnant and the great crowd, as a united organization under the protection of the supreme organizer, have any scriptural hope of surviving the impending end of this doomed system dominated by Satan the devil." End quote. From time to time, I still see JWs and JW apologists arguing that they believe this, and there it is in September 1st, 1989 Watchtower. They're the only ones who are going to survive. You simply can't feel security unless you're a Jehovah's Witness. And so a Jehovah's Witness wakes up every day and believes all they have to do. And I think this is so important. I want to underline this. All they have to do is stick to the schedule, the lifestyle that the governing body has taught them, given them. And if they do just that, they can then feel secure. And I'm here saying that it's not only a lie and a false sense of security, but this does deep, deep damage to your psyche and your soul. All of this lives under the oversized umbrella of all things religion. I get it. But we're talking about Jehovah's Witnesses. That's what this show's about. It's just my opinion. But noted psychologist Carl Jung said in his Collected Works, Volume 5, paragraph 343, he said something so profound that continues to jingle around in my head, knock around. He said, quote, "The religious myth is one of man's greatest and most significant achievements, giving him the security and inner strength not to be crushed by the monstrousness of the universe. And when you crave a sense of emotional security, you will seek it out. This trap was laid decades ago by the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses, and it works. I can attest to that because even now, I've been out since 2009, February 2009. Even now, there are moments like a deja vu, like a quick twinge, like a smell, like a thought, like a quote, all of it. I still find myself impacted at times, undoing emotions, fears, and more. And it was all rooted in what I was taught from when I was a little boy, in this false sense of security. I bought into it as a kid. Stick to the schedule, do what you're told, be obedient. And somehow that created in me this mental and emotional quagmire that I just didn't have to worry about anything else. All I had to do was please Jehovah and go to the Kingdom Hall. And I would feel secure. And I hope I'm really explaining that, and I'm hoping others will and can relate to what I'm trying to describe. And let me tell you, undoing that, when you realize it's a false sense of security, I feel confident in saying I'll be undoing that the rest of my life. Because I feel 95% healed. But like I mentioned, every now and then, something gives me a tweak. And one more point to land this all home. From the Watchtower of June 15th, 2010, pages 6 through 8, the series Find Security Among God's People, Jehovah's Witnesses were told this, quote, "Secular society offers only a limited amount of security, whether physical or emotional. What a contrast in outlook there is between those who are part of the Christian congregation and those who are not." End quote for a moment. There it is. Physical and emotional security shaped by them, defined by them, and only available through them. It's in contrast to the rest of the world. Back to the quote, "Even though we as Jehovah's people have to face many of the same issues and problems our neighbors face, our reaction is quite different." Why? Because we find in the Bible a satisfying explanation for the condition in which humanity finds itself, and we are equipped to deal with life's challenges and problems. As a result, we are not overly anxious about the future. Being worshipers of Jehovah affords us protection from unsound and unscriptural reasoning, immoral practices, and the consequences of such. Members of the Christian congregation thus experience a tranquility unknown to others. End quote. Not certain if this was a blind poll or what, but feel free to walk up to a group of Jehovah's Witnesses at their book cart and ask them if they are experiencing tranquility, if they're tranquil. Aside from all of that and the typical absurdity from the Watchtower, you can see this false sense of security at a micro level in a Jehovah's Witness life. Consider for a moment your past life, current life, or whatever it may be. Consider life inside a local congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. Now be honest with yourself. How much did you take for granted? How much did you turn your brain off and hit autopilot at the meetings? Is it safe to say that life as you had periods in your life that you were just on cruise control? You know what I mean. Push the button, show up to the Kingdom Hall, give that talk, shake a few hands, go out and field service a few times a month, and do it all over again, week after week after week after week. Now, there was a sense of security in the program, wasn't there? You felt like you were in the right place, doing the right thing. And it was so easy to connect the dots to land on emotional security. Attend the meetings, study, pray. Yeah, I got a sense of security. A hamster wheel format that only cemented that belief that by following it and obeying it over and over and over and over again, you were truly secure. Am I right? All of those other things you might be facing in life outside the Kingdom Hall, the same stuff all those worldly people, the unbelievers are facing, it was nothing. It was nothing. It was stressful. But it was nothing because you were a Jehovah's Witness and you were part of the program. Thereby, you felt secure. Emotionally, physically, mentally, all of it. However, it took almost nothing. That's not true. It took something for you to realize that you're simply living in a false sense of security in your own congregation. You slipped up and did something wrong and they said your name from the stage. Ooh, something changed. People look at me a little different, at least for a while. I can't answer anymore. It was so fragile. And it impacted you emotionally. And maybe that's what woke you up to what you were a part of. But I'm here to tell you that this is very real stuff. And it impacts someone that was a witness or a Jehovah's Witness now. It impacts them every day of their life. They're thinking, they feel secure. They can't imagine getting off the ark. They're just going to fall in the water. Take another example. How many of you trusted or felt secure with the congregation elders? Here's a pet subject. Here's one that always gets a lot of listens and views, even on YouTube. The elders. But genuinely, think about it a minute. Not in your current mindset, but in the mindset you may have had in the past. How many of you felt secure with the congregation elders? They made you feel secure, safe. How many of us looked at the elders and trusted them to always do the right thing, to tell you the right thing to do? And then finally, how many of us felt confident that the elders themselves were incredibly wise and you could find security in any and all counsel they provided? Can you relate? I mean, they were showering in Holy Spirit every night, right? The governing body says they are. And I have to confess, I'm not really sure in 2026 if the elders are still on pedestals or hold this type of esteem in a congregation. I know they have the authority, but I'm talking about how we viewed them. We viewed them as very important men, shepherds protecting us. They made us feel better, secure. Back in the day, we almost used to revere the elders. Someone can correct me if that's no longer the case. We knew in our hearts that they would never steer us wrong and they would always protect us, giving us this cocoon both emotionally and physically, that we were secure, come what may. I'm sure we all even remember the catchphrases and illustrations about shepherds. Oh, yeah, the shepherds, including Jesus' own words. Remember this at Matthew 18, where it says in their book, the Bible, that a shepherd will leave the 99 sheep to track down a single lost sheep out there. We had this stuff rammed down our throats all the time. What was it doing? It was molding how we viewed security, folks. The elders were a big part of that. How about this one? From Isaiah 32, 1 and 2 of the New World Translation, where this is applied to the security of Jehovah's Witness elders and what they should be providing. You remember, quote, "Look, a king will reign for righteousness, and princes will rule for justice, and each one will be like a hiding place from the wind, a place of concealment from the rainstorm, like streams of water in a waterless land, like the shadow of a massive crag in a parched land." End quote. Oh, yeah. The endless Watchtower studies, the Draw Close to Jehovah book. So many times they reference Isaiah 32, 1 and 2, and how the elders would keep us secure. The governing body goes out of its way to paint this false sense of security using just such Bible verses. And he points to the guys in the hall that you might have had a beer with last night, who, incidentally now, these same guys, Isaiah 32, 1 and 2, we're told are describing, well, this organization is now appointing 21-year-old boys to this job as bastions of security, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. You're hurting about something, you've done something, or maybe you're just depressed, or maybe you're just hurting. The elders will help. You've been harmed by someone. Trust the elders. You're not sure what to do with that big decision? Call your elders. You need a blood transfusion to just be alive next week? Call the elders. Jehovah's Witnesses are taught that they can trust their lives in the hands of their local congregation elders. Men who've done nothing more but put in a certain amount of time in preaching in front of the book cart, but have zero experience with any of life's most serious problems. Some of the most awful advice I've heard on anything has come from my time as a Jehovah's Witness elder, from other elders. And frankly, this subject, I should say, is worth an entire episode. Because for me personally, the shocking lack of ignorance and dishonor, lack of character, of principled character that I saw from elders was absolutely one of the key factors to me packing it in and leaving. And I'll tell you, and I'll be very vulnerable here, that shattered illusion I had since I was a little boy, that the elders were in fact a source of security, when I learned that they weren't, I'm not going to lie to you, it was completely devastating to me. Probably part of my not having a father. I had truly felt secure in the illusion of these men, even when I was one of them. And again, when I saw it collapse, man, it was bad. It was devastating. I had put all of them and this entire arrangement, the elders, in my own quest to find security, especially emotionally and mentally. I had put these guys on a pedestal. Yeah, let's dive into that future. I just decided. It doesn't stop the governing body from telling us this about the elders. From the September 15th, 1989 Watchtower, page 10, paragraph 3. Elders guard your trust is the article. We are told this about the elders, quote, Christian elders must prove to be like a hiding place from the wind and a place of concealment from the rainstorm, like streams of water in a waterless country, like the shadow of a heavy crag in an exhausted land, Isaiah 32, 1 and 2. Back to the quote. This means that elders should be sources of security, peace, and stability to the flock of God's sheep-like servants, end quote. There it is. No future episode. Yeah, at least not yet. But I'll ask again. Did the elder arrangement, or for a witness bravely here, does the elder arrangement make you personally feel emotionally secure? Because they claim that an elder must do this from their magazine. I'll read it again, quote, elders should be sources of security, end quote. Was that or is that your experience? And even if it is or isn't, did this belief system shape your sense of security? Do I need to ask if this has been the experience of thousands, God, that's sickening, thousands of innocent children that have been harmed inside this supposed hiding place from the wind and rain? I know how devastated I was to learn the truth about elders on all things security. I can't begin to fathom the devastation of believing elders that were appointed to provide security to children, only to find out that some of these same men, that's right, elders, are in fact the perpetrators and abusers of these same children. Sickening doesn't cover it. But on all things mental and emotional security, for those dear souls that are listening that were victims of abuse as children inside this organization, my heart is shattered for you, and one can't simply begin to wrap their head around what you must be feeling to believe you're safe with such men, only to find out that in the worst case scenario, they're the very people hurting you. In the best case scenario, they minimize your pain and don't report it. I have a really long list of things that support my claim that this organization fosters a false sense of security, but I'm only going to consider one more. And frankly, depending on who you are, where you are in your own personal timeline, this one goes straight scorched earth on a Jehovah's Witness. The psychological damage, the lost time, the potential, all things I talk about, and overall, the absolute mind F this gives people isn't even measurable. It's not measurable. What is it? Jehovah's Witnesses give a false sense of security about death. I've shared that I get so many DMs from wonderful people all over the earth. It's one of the coolest things that happens to me. Be patient about me answering. I'm sorry, there's a lot. The DMs I get from people asking how to wake up someone they love inside Jehovah's Witnesses. That's number one. I get that a lot. A lot. Probably 70, 80%. Maybe a little less. How can I help wake up my mom? How can I help wake up someone I love? But do you want to know what's a close second in terms of subject? A close second is someone asking how to wrap their head around, how to assimilate, how to accept going back into society, finding friends, feeling normal. That's the second one. So we got one, how do I help someone I love get out? Two, what am I supposed to do with my life now? But let me tell you something. There is one question about how to deal with the loss of security around death that is by far the question I get most from people who have left and significant time has passed. Isn't that interesting? It's very interesting to me. It's also painful. It hurts. I get DMs at least once every episode asking me, how do you deal with the concept that we're not going to live in paradise? It's usually not the first sense of loss or insecurity that someone feels when they decide to leave Jehovah's Witnesses. That is typically what I just said. It's usually, what do I do about people, relationships, or community? I'm lost. But I'm here to tell you, with those that have left and have significant time with the organization in their rearview mirror, with each passing day, the false sense of security this organization thrusts upon all of us about death, it begins to dominate your thinking. Now you're thinking, why? I'll tell you why. Because it was something entire generations of Jehovah's Witnesses took for granted. We felt secure. We were doing the program. We never had to consider death because we were told by this organization and its leaders that it wasn't going to happen to us. We believed it. And we just carried on, obeying everything that the governing body said to do, feeling a sense of not only physical, but mental and emotional security in their promises. And make no mistake, it was a promise. I can't believe that this stuff is still accessible on their website, but I want to show you or share a very brief snapshot of what we were told, my generation, and how this is a devastating thing for us as we get older. And here it is. Here it is. From the very back page of the Watchtower of January 1st, 1979, page 32, the title of this little throwaway couple of paragraphs is "Many Now Living Will Never Die." The subheading says, "This is no wild assertion. There are sound reasons to believe it." Do you want to know what comes next? The Watchtower and Awake magazines regularly point to these Bible-based reasons. Send only $4 US and you will receive both magazines. 4 copies a month for you younger people, imagine, for 1 year post-paid. Please send a year's subscription for the Watchtower and Awake. I enclose $4 US, end quote. Yeah, there was a time with the literature. We'll do it another time. But what got them to part with $4 was the title. Many Now Living Will Never Die. This is no wild assertion. There are sound reasons to believe it. Go see for yourself. January 1st, 1979, Watchtower, page 32. This exact snippet, this exact false sense of security about our lives was reproduced millions, if not billions of times. You will find this exact same paragraph from this Watchtower on page 31 of the Awake magazine from January 8th, 1986. Full confession here, I grew up and found personal security to the point of intellectual laziness because I based the way I thought and felt on the promise that I was never going to get old and die. To this day, this one still impacts me, folks. I don't know if I'm alone. I'd love to hear. My generation of Jehovah's Witnesses wrapped ourselves in this blanket, this false blanket of security, believing we were very special. We were the most special of generations. We were the one generation that loved Jehovah that would never die. I still believe this is one of the sickest, most evil, repugnant things this organization has ever done to people. It truly distorted our minds. And as I mentioned, I still get wonderful people DMing me on this show's social media asking me how I handle it. They're really struggling with the reality that we were living in a false sense of security. Just know that you're not alone. I'm in the group with you. And they will ask me how to deal with it. Are you struggling? How did you come to a conclusion? What's the answer? How do you feel better? Here's the answer for anyone who DMs. There isn't one. There isn't one. It was all a lie. A false sense of security created and promoted by evil men. We aren't special, in case you haven't figured that out looking in the mirror these days. Gray hair, a couple crow's feet, six-pack abs. Well, they're gone, but you know. If a younger Jehovah's Witness tries to tell you that this organization never taught this, that this was never a thing, you can point them to many, many, many references in their own library. I just pulled one. But if you really want to keep it simple for that young person, start here. Here's one for you. The October 1st, 1983 Watchtower, page 31, questions from the readers. Brace thyselves. The question to the readers was, by the way, my kind of people, does Jesus' promise of everlasting life, as given at John 11:25 and 26, apply only to the anointed? Or do these words embrace also the great crowd who look forward to life in the paradise earth? I'll get to their answer, but first the scripture they asked about, John 11:25 and 26. You might remember, New World Translation, it says, quote, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who exercises faith in me, even though he dies, will come to life. And everyone who is living and exercises faith in me will never die at all. End quote, John 11:25 and 26. And now to the illustrious comments of the governing body from this question from the readers, 83 Watchtower. Quote, at certain times in the past, the Watchtower has suggested that the application of the scripture is limited to those Christians who gain heavenly life. Evidently, this view was taken because Jesus was there speaking to persons who later would be given that hope. But a careful examination of these scriptures show that Jesus was not making such a limitation. As the articles for study in this issue of the Watchtower confirm, our viewpoint on John 11:25 and 26 must be the broader one that includes those persons whose hope is to live forever in the paradise earth. The Watchtower of April 15th, 1976, page 243, likewise included resurrected mankind along with the great crowd of Armageddon survivors in those same words of Jesus, quote, everyone that is living and exercising faith in me will never die at all. Do you believe this? Do you? End quote. Do you? The belief that many would never die is likely a lie and a false sense of security that this organization will never promote again, making my generation and the people who were alive during the same time period incredibly rare with this organization. You remember Judge Joe's book called Millions Now Living Will Never Die. Well, it's all but forgotten. They pull it out every now and then. As are the people that read that book and believed it. They're gone. Generations overlap now. The 20th century has ended. And despite the heavenly hope being shut down in 1935, then reopened without any explanation by Jesus recently, despite all that, you're probably not going to hear this false sense of security again. but we did. My generation is indeed unique. They are never again going to give them that false sense of security that they did with us, that we would never die. But folks, there are millions of us that are still unpacking that. And candidly, I would love for someone to initiate a study on the impact this had on our lives. Like I said, I'm mostly healed, but every now and then, I just recently lost a friend. That was one of those now and thens. Death can be a terrifying subject for those that never gave a second of consideration to any of it. We just threw it in the garbage can because it wasn't going to happen. Outside of losing friends and family, this right here may be the single most devastating thing a Jehovah's Witness, at least from my time period, faces when they decide to leave. And frankly, this deserves a deeper dive, this subject alone. But I'm not sure I have anything more to share right now. These are just my stream of consciousness this week. I am just like everyone else. You too. And the answers just aren't easy. They don't come with a magazine illustration of kids riding elephants or people embracing their resurrected grandparents in a paradise. No, they don't. The truth is, death is real, and it obliterates the sense of security many of us devoted our lives to believing in. And there is nothing I can say and nothing easy about it. Dr. Julie Exline, writing for Psychology Today, shared an article in 2013 titled, "In Pursuit of Warm Fuzzies, Turning to Faith for Comfort." And she posed the question in the article, quote, "What happens when people use religion and spirituality as sources of security?" The quote continues, "For many people, belief in a loving God can be a source of warm fuzzies. We feel safe and secure if we think of an infinitely powerful being looking out for us, protecting and guiding us. My colleagues Ann Yali, Bill Sanderson, and I tried to capture this idea in the late 1990s when developing our religious comfort and strain scale. When reflecting on their experiences related to religion, undergraduates and patients at a mental health clinic usually endorsed comforting items on the scale, such as trusting God to protect and care for you, feeling comforted by your faith, and feeling loved by God. These findings supported the idea that for many people, faith, including belief in a loving, protective, trustworthy God, can be a source of comfort and security." End quote. And I'm here to tell you, it's a thought that is only supported by a very unscientific study, my own experience, my own observations. It's supported by a lifetime of disappointment inside Jehovah's Witnesses. And the realization that I was never secure at all. At least not based on their beliefs. I called it a mind F. I'll try to keep it clean here, because it is. As I do, a famous author, C.S. Lewis, I'm sure many of you know him, in his book, Mere Christianity, said this, quote, "If you look for truth, you may find comfort in the end. If you look for comfort, you will not get either comfort or truth. Only soft soap and wishful thinking to begin with. And in the end, despair." End quote. Such a big subject. So curious to know how other people feel about dealing with the mental and emotional demons of letting go of that sense of security. We all desperately want to feel secure. We want that warm blanket. We want a sense of security. But as if we spend too much time seeking security, we usually end up with, how did C.S. Lewis just say it? He called it wishful thinking to begin with, and in the end, despair. Make no mistake, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses knows this about human nature. They know it about you. They know it about me. It explains the music videos and the movie projects, all of which we know impact and feed our emotions, molding your thinking, your very personality into someone who is truly living in a fantasy land you desperately, really want to be true. But one thing is certain. Whether you consider it wishful thinking or a true sense of security, I can assure you that all the security of my youth has completely evaporated. It was never real to begin with. And the true crime is in knowing that if you waste time putting trust in their false sense of security today, as C.S. Lewis said, I promise you, it will truly end in despair. I want to thank you for being with me this week. Wherever you may be well.